about that, Calgary? Can you hear me now? Apparently I bumped the mute button. Cool. So yeah, you can build anything you want now. Like, you know, an alarm clock. Morning, guys.
I built one, but it didn't work.
Clearly. The irony of what I had just said previously is rich right now. Yeah, literally. So what I want to put in context for you is what it's going to look like now that you are transitioning out of boot camp and into the real world of being a professional dev. Because while we have done a lot of things here that are similar to how a dev shop works, you have gotten a lot of experiences here in terms of collaboration and working with, you know, tooling and working together in a space. There are some things that need to be talked about that are going to be important for you as you go forward. One of those, one of the biggest ones is what that first job is going to be like. You know, what that first job is going to mean for you. And a lot of people come into a boot camp program very focused on getting that first job and how that is going to set them up for their, you know, career trajectory where they're working at Google in just a couple years. And some people are coming into the boot camp or coming out of the boot camp completely terrified that no one's ever going to hire you ever, because why would they ever hire someone who's only been coding for 10 weeks? And all of those fears are legitimate because you're feeling them. At any point in the past 9 weeks where you have had a worry about what your employment path is going to look like going forward, it was legitimate. It was a legitimate fear, not because what you were thinking was a real thing, but because it affected the choices that you were making. So I'm going to say something in my tradition of saying slightly controversial things. That is, you don't need to worry about that, because where you work when you come out of the boot camp doesn't matter. What matters is that you're getting experience. That's the key piece you need to be chasing. Where you work is not going to pigeonhole you, silo you in one particular discipline for the rest of your dev career. Where you work is not going to change the ultimate end goal of where you end up having your most career success as a dev. It's not going to stunt your growth. It's not going to limit your ability to learn. It's not going to hinder you in any way. And I don't want you to focus on any of those aspects as you go through the process of interviewing and potentially getting a job. What I want you to focus on is finding a place that is going to give you an environment where you can get experience, where you will get mentorship, where you will have an opportunity to build and support a product. It doesn't matter what language they're building in at all. It doesn't matter what their product is at all. It doesn't matter what part of town they are in at all. What matters is that there are companies out there that are willing to give you money for you to come work for them. That's what matters. In 3 to 5 years, when you've had a fair amount of dev experience, when you have shipped things, when you have been through scary Friday afternoon deployments that may or may not have gone well and you were still on call overnight on Friday night, where you have seen databases crash and had to recover from them, where you have seen people get hired and fired, when you have seen project management tools get changed, when you have experienced several different styles of tech leadership from different senior devs and tech leads, then I want you to care completely about who you're working for, what you're working on, and where you're working. Because after that point, after you have acquired that experience, that's when you are informed and able to start shaping your career. Because if you worry about what your career is going to be right now, you're focused on the wrong thing. Very much like how when you came in the door and we told you that if you're focused on what somebody else is doing on their computer and how they're able to do it, you're focused on the wrong thing. You need to be focused on your skill development. That 100% still proves true. In fact, I'm going to do something very particular in that I'm going to go back to those 5 rules that we talked about on day 1. And I'm going to go over them again because now they have a very different context for you. We told you those were the 5 rules of success at Lighthouse Labs. They're not. They're 5 rules for success at being a developer. Rule number 1. Anybody remember what it was? Started with an A. Little green button up in the upper right-hand corner of compass. That's the one. Ben, you get a cookie. Ask for help. So here's the interesting thing. Up until this point, your version of asking for help was either leaning over to the person next to you or clicking that button. The first one needs to stay. The collaboration and development doesn't change just because you're graduating boot camp. The way that you're going to get help from a senior going forward, though, that should change. By necessity, it needs to change. Because the big difference between the boot camp environment and a dev shop is that in a dev shop, that senior has their own code that they need to be writing. They have their own tasks, their own meetings, their own emails that they need to be following up on. They've got the same workload that you do, and they're expected to do it at a much higher level. If anything, they're probably having to do more work than you are, because as a junior, your responsibilities are by necessity going to be limited. So when you are asking for help, I'm going to encourage you to use all of the troubleshooting skills that you have been building over the past 9 weeks. The very famous Simpsons gif of Flanders, you know, I've tried nothing and I'm all out of ideas. You can't be that junior. That's not the person that you're going to be when you go out and get a job. Have you Googled it? Have you actually looked up what the error message means? Have you tried changing the data? Have you tried changing the logic? Have you tried changing the syntax? Have you looked on Stack Overflow? Have you read the documentation? Have you rubber ducked it? Have you asked a colleague about it? If any of those questions is no, you're not ready to go bug your senior yet. In some cases, the company's going to be so small that, you know, your colleague is your senior, and so therefore that one's a twofer. But until you have done all that other work, you're not ready yet to ask for help. Now, please do not go out into the industry and say, but Don said don't ask for help. Because that's not what I'm saying at all. And trust me, the times I've been misquoted, oh my God. What I'm saying is, you're going to need help. But you have the skills to be able to answer a fairly sizable chunk of your own questions before needing to engage someone else. The cool thing that we see with every single cohort is the number of assistance requests starts out up here, and then it gradually goes down over the course of the 9 weeks. And that's cool. That's good for us to see because it means you're becoming more self-sufficient. It means that you're relying on each other more for that level of troubleshooting. Keep doing that. But when you do feel that urge to reach for that now metaphorical green button, because we're taking your green button away, make sure you've done the due diligence. Asking for help is the way that you leapfrog yourself past the roadblocks. That's the way that you unlock yourself. You know, not to do the get off of my lawn speech, but like when I was learning to code, we didn't have Google. I know, right? How do you live in a world without Google? But yeah, like Google literally hadn't been invented yet. It wasn't even a research paper at Stanford yet. And so I was having to like flip through books and ask people that I knew online how to do things. And if they didn't know, well, it was just me beating my head against a wall until I could get past that point. I would have killed for a boot camp where I could click a button and someone would come and unlock me. So you've seen the value of that. You've seen the value of being able to get that knowledge, that best practice, that wisdom, and that experience from someone and use it to leapfrog past all of those obstructions. That's still going to be as valuable as it has ever been, if not more so, because you're going to be starting, in a new environment with a whole new set of tools and a whole new product and a whole new set of code that you're going to have to learn. But I'm going to encourage you to make sure that you have done your due diligence first. Rule number 2 had something to do with a clock. No? Anyone? Put in the hours. So I have good news and I have bad news for you. The good news is you no longer have to keep boot camp hours after next Thursday. You get to sleep, you get to bathe, you get to do laundry, you get to do all those things that you have been missing for like 2 months. But one of the things that's going to be necessary for you to achieve the kind of success that I know that you all want is that you're going to have to keep pushing yourself. 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, is not going to be enough to keep your trajectory going the way that you're going to want to go. And here's why. In almost every case, you're going to get a job working with technologies and products that are older. And that's actually a good thing, because it means you're going to learn the best practices of working with those technologies and how they have evolved over time. But what you're not going to get is that new cutting edge feeling where you're feeling like you're on top and on the edge, and the hemorrhaging bleeding edge of technology and JavaScript and every new thing that's going to come out. You're not going to have that feeling where every single day is a brand new technology being handed to you. One of the downsides of coming out of a boot camp is that you are going to have to chase that feeling of having new tech handed to you every day. That's something that we have, that's a dopamine high that we have deliberately created, where every single day we have handed you new technology and shown you new things to do. When you stop having that, I will tell you from personal experience and from all the bootcamp grads that I've seen, when you lose that constant introduction to something new, your brain automatically shifts to a mode where you feel like you're missing out. So the good news is you don't have to put in boot camp hours. The bad news is you're still going to have to push yourself. You're still going to have to take a couple evenings a week and at least one weekend day and keep yourself current. Keep reading blog posts. Keep looking at Hacker News and Echo.js and JavaScript Weekly and Web Tools Weekly and the React newsletter. There's newsletters that will come out that are curated sets of the best content that has been done in each language for whatever you're building in. PHP, Java, Go, doesn't matter. You're going to want to subscribe to those. In fact, I think one of the Compass activities that we have for today is a list of newsletters that you can go and subscribe to. And at first it will be overwhelming, but there's no requirement that you have to look at every single link in every single newsletter. Pick and choose the things that interest you. And it's not going to be enough to load up the page for a new library and go, oh cool, I see the example, that's neat, and close it. That's not going to be enough. Download the library, npm install it, take an hour or two and build a small project with it. Be able to actually poke it and see what it does and see how it works and decide if this is something that you would want to keep working with. And that means you have to keep building. And that's one of the two mantras of my lecture today, is you have to keep building. You're going to have to keep doing side projects. You're going to have to keep uh, yourself on that cutting edge and keep chasing that feeling of learning new tech over and over and over again. But it's also because you're going to need those skills that you're going to acquire from doing your own side projects in order to keep yourself ahead of the curve and push your experience forward, so that when the next job comes along and the next job after that and the next job after that, you've got the skills necessary to land that job. That's what keeps your career moving vertically as opposed to just horizontally. Because anybody can go and work 9 to 5 as a dev, and when you work 9 to 5 as a dev and you just do the same job day in, day out, you can work for that company for a couple years and work for another company for a couple years and work for another company for a couple years. And you can say, great, I've got 6 years of experience as a dev. But you don't. You've got 2 years of experience 3 times. So the side projects and your continuation of your skill development is how you move vertically instead of just horizontally. And if you've ever seen any show like ER or Grey's Anatomy or anything, you know what a flat line means. Don't let your career do that. Put in the hours. Keep building. Rule number 3, I'll throw you a bone on this one. Take breaks and get proper sleep. Do I need to wake up Benji? Who's conspicuously absent, but here's the thing. If you take nothing else from this lecture, I want you to take this one piece of advice. Find something that you love to do that has nothing to do with technology, and do it at least once a week. Video games don't count. Netflix doesn't count. Reading ebooks doesn't count. There's a big shiny thing in the sky every once in a while. Go see it. There's trees, there's mountains, there's water. There are lots of cool things outside that you can go experience. In fact, rumor has it that if you eat good food and go sweat every once in a while and get some sun, that your brain actually makes this happy chemical that makes you happy. If you don't do that, you're going to burn yourself out. A lot of people come out of boot camp and are like, oh yeah, I know Don said not to keep boot camp hours, but if I just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, I'm just going to accelerate myself that much further, right? So I'm going to still work 12 hours a day for the next year, and sure, it'll suck and I'll be tired, but I'm young and I can do it. I've burnt out before. In fact, I pretty much lost one of the best dev jobs I ever had because I completely and totally burnt out. And there is nothing worse than sitting at a desk, earning a paycheck, staring at a screen, knowing what needs to go on the screen, and having zero interest in actually making it happen. Worst feeling ever. Where it's akin to being depressed. And if you've ever actually been clinically depressed, you know what that feeling of lack of motivation looks like. It's not something where you just decide, oh, I'm going to feel different. Doesn't work. You don't have the energy or the motivation or, quite frankly, the give a shit to do it any differently. And it's because I pushed. I worked 14 hours a day building startups for like years. And suddenly I got this really plum job, and it was wonderful. And I was making a grotesque amount of money, and I completely flamed out. I had the tipping point was something happened in my personal life which didn't go the way I wanted it to go, and I completely flamed out. And I would go to work, and I would just sit there, and I'd basically just stare at my screen. I'd make it look like I was working. At one point, I was typing nursery rhymes into my editor so that it looked like I was typing, because that was the only thing I could keep going through my head. It sucks. And I've seen so many people do it. We jokingly have something in career services that we refer to as our bartender list. And it's the students who went through the boot camp, did really well, went and got dev jobs, burned themselves out, and are now working as either baristas or bartenders. And it's a real thing. I want to encourage you, as I'm telling you to push yourself, as I'm telling you to keep building, I want to encourage you to also take care of yourself. There is nothing you are going to gain from completely depleting all of your energy, all of your reserves, your will to succeed that put you in this room in the first place. Absolutely nothing is going to benefit from you draining that dry, like blood from a stone dry, and then expecting to go to work the next day and be productive. Rule number 3 is super important. Rule number 4 ties into this. Rule number 4 is don't compare yourself to others. If you are going to leave this program and you are going to think that you're going to become the best, please stop now. Stop thinking that way, because you won't. There is no one in the world who is the best at anything in development. Our profession is way too complex. There are too many skills that any one person has to have. There are people who are amazing at things. And if you want to chase a title, if you're chasing an adjective, chase that one. Chase someone looking at you and saying, holy crap, you are an amazing dev. That's the adjective you want to chase. But there's no one who is the best. Because if you're going to say you're going to be the best JavaScript developer, okay, great. Front end or back end? Back end. Okay, no problem. Morning, Benji. So you're going to be the best back end developer. Okay, great. Using which framework? Oh, well, I'm going to be the best Express dev. Okay, well, you've got some catching up to do for starters, because Express has been around for like 6 years. So are you going to be the best Express web dev? Or are you going to be the best Express WebSocket dev? Or are you going to be the best Express file server dev? Or mail? Or is it going to be APIs? Or are you going to do web content? And is it going to be web content for, that's API driven, or actually rendering templates? And which template engine are you going to become the best at? Chasing that label has you chasing the wrong thing. Chase respect. Chase the respect that you will get from contributing great things to the ecosystem. If you get out into the community, the developer community, you go to meetups, you go to conferences, you go to hackathons, over and over and over again, you will see that the people that have the most respect in our community are the people who are contributing, not the people who are consuming. Consumption's easy. I can read all the blog posts, and I can watch all the YouTube videos, and I can, go through all the tutorials. But if I'm not putting anything out into the world, if I'm not building anything, if I'm not making products, no one's going to give a shit. Plain and simple. And the people that do get that respect are the people who are building. When we talk about Adi Osmani, for example, is a great example. If you haven't come across him yet, you will. Adi works for Google. He didn't always, but he worked for Google. And he wrote the book on JavaScript design patterns. Great book. It's available free online. He works on the Chrome DevTools team. So all of the cool JavaScript debugging and breakpoint tools that are in Chrome, he built those. That's a contribution to the community. Now, I'm not saying you have to go work for Google and work on the Chrome DevTools in order to be considered respectable. But he's a very good example. At the same time, we have the guys here in town that started Cordova, PhoneGap. That was one of the first libraries that allowed you to take a web application and put it on a phone. They got bought by Adobe, but they contributed something huge to the ecosystem. And literally, it started as a hackathon idea. Latergram, which is now Later, literally multi-million-dollar company, started at a hackathon. It was a weekend hackathon project to literally just set up a scheduled task that would post to Instagram later, hence the name. But it was something that was built, and it contributed, and it made a difference, and they actually threw a party when they hit 100,000 users, because that meant that that was the kind of respect and traction that they were getting. So worry about what you're building, not what label you're acquiring. Because if you're not building, you're not going to get any of those labels. If you're comparing yourself to somebody else and saying, oh, well, they're so much better than I am, I'm never going to be that. Well, how long have they been coding? And maybe they're just really good at it. Worry about being good on your own. That's what's important. You know, the cheesy thing that we tend to say is the only person you ever need to be better at is you yesterday. If you're not worrying about being better than where you were yesterday, you're focused on the wrong person and the wrong challenge. And last but not least, rule number 5, be comfortable being uncomfortable. Now, we told you that to prepare you for boot camp, because obviously the last 9 weeks have not exactly been a Mexican all-inclusive. But when you go out and you become a professional dev, every single task you're going to get asked to do is something that has never been done before with that set of technology in that product by that company ever before. So you're going to be uncomfortable. When you go and you sit down day 1 in that new job, all the imposter syndrome feelings that you felt way back in week 1 are going to come back. That little cracked out squirrel in the back of your head that tells you you're a fraud, why are you here, nobody's going to like you, they're going to fire you, they're going to find out you're not good enough. All those little voices are going to come back. And when they do, the only thing you can do is write one more line of code. Because anything else gives in. Anything else means that the discomfort has overwhelmed you and it wins. And that's not how you succeed. Write one more line of code. Every time you feel like you're in the wrong place, that you're a fraud, that you're doing the wrong thing, write one more line of code. And I can tell this group of people that now and know that you know how to do that. Because you're sitting here, because you've completed the program. I know that you're going to be able to sit down and write one more line of code. You have the ability to defeat your own imposter syndrome. And when you write that line of code, even if you have to sit there for 2 or 3 more minutes and listen to that voice, write one more line of code, listen to the voice, write one more line of code, all of a sudden, 30 minutes later, you've got 10 lines of code that are doing something. You've got 2 or 3 functions that are now doing something. And you can work with that, and the momentum will pick up, and the voice will just shut up. You've got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. You've got to be comfortable feeling like everything is a challenge, like everything is set up to keep you from succeeding, and that you have to brute force your way through it. You've got to be comfortable with that. Yes, it gets easier. Yes, as you acquire more skills and more experience and you learn more of whatever languages you're working in, yes, it all gets easier, but it also gets harder because the problems get harder. The apps that we've had you build in this boot camp, they were challenging. And they're pretty basic level stuff. Think about what you're doing on your final project now. Compare that to Tiny App. In fact, if you would like some amusement, I encourage all of you today to take 5 minutes and go back and look at your code for Tiny App. You will hate yourself. You will be convinced that 8 weeks ago, you had like a head wound or a heroin habit or something, because why would you ever write code that way? I encourage you to take 5 minutes, because that'll actually make you feel good to see how far you've come. Your final projects are complex. They are full products. They are you pushing the boundaries of everything you know. I'll also tell you to think back to a week ago when you started your final projects and you had doubts about whether or not you were actually going to be able to deliver something. And think about where your project is right now. So be comfortable being uncomfortable. Doubt is human. But if you write one more line of code, you can make the doubt go away over and over and over again. When you're getting offered a job, some of you may get one offer, some of you may get 12 offers, doesn't matter. When you're getting offered a job, like I said, make sure you're chasing the experience. If you get multiple offers, you can weigh them with things like, what team am I going to be working with? What product am I going to be working on? What technologies am I going to be working with? But that one should be the last one on the list. You shouldn't even be worrying about where you're going to be working. We have had graduates turn down jobs because a company in Burnaby offered them a job. Well, if I'm not in Gastown, I'm not relevant. Have you heard of the SkyTrain? We have had, huh? Yeah, small company, yeah. They've got a small little office that takes up like, what, 10 acres? For Calgary, it's like, oh, well, you know, it's downtown or Kensington or nothing. So that shouldn't be a factor. We've had people turn down jobs. This is one of my favorites. Well, they use PHP. And so does 27% of the internet. Are you going to tell me it's not relevant? Well, I like JavaScript. It's cooler. And who's stopping you from writing in JavaScript? Just because you have a job where your primary language is PHP, are you now no longer allowed to build in JavaScript ever? No. That may be what you do from 9 to 5, but that's why we have side projects. And every line of code you write in any language is going to make you better in every language. The logic doesn't change. The data doesn't change. The syntax is the only thing that changes. So great. Go get good with a new syntax, because that will make your skills in everything else you want to do that much better. One of my favorites. Oh, I can't work for them. They don't have a foosball table. And the follow-up quote, when I was like, what? Well, how do you expect me to be productive without a foosball table? I don't know. Have you tried not playing foosball? Crazy idea. The all-time winner, though. This one, I don't think this one will ever be topped. This is not a challenge. I don't think this one will ever be topped, though, is graduate, out of the program, very talented on the front end, came in with some design training already, went through the program. This was back when we had the Ruby curriculum. Got offered a job doing Rails development, full-time, no internship, at like $60,000, $62,000 a year. Nice salary to start with. Yeah, exactly. Close your mouth. And the quote was, well, I can't work there. They don't have a juice machine. And like, this was after having sent an email saying, I'm declining your offer. Right. Only in Vancouver. You know, Calgary, well, I can't work there. They don't serve steak. I kid, Calgary. Sort of. But yeah, that was a real thing that happened. I wish I could make this up, but I'm quoting, I can't work there because they don't have a juice machine. None of those are reasons to turn down employment. And I'll tell this story from my own life. So before I was working at Lighthouse, about a year and a bit before I started working here, I was looking for a new job, and I got two offers from two companies. One of them was working in Node.js, and it was working on a tool that did basically monitoring and profiling and performance measurements for Node apps. So it was an NPM module that you installed, and it would automatically build charts and graphs about the performance of your Node app and be able to do profiling. And it wasn't very sexy, but it was really cool code. And they were in the Dominion building, which is the one across the street from Victory Square, where Nuba and the Amsterdam Cafe are, the big orange building. They were in that building. And their office was tiny. Like, the entire office was like the size of this lounge area, and there were 6 people that worked there. So I would have been like squeezed in a corner. And I got to thinking about it, and I'm like, well, if I go work there, it's a crappy office. I'm going to have to climb the stairs every day. I'm going to be over the Amsterdam Cafe and Nuba, so I'm constantly going to have the munchies. And the code's not really that great, and it's just a stuffy, cramped little office. The other one was this company that was a $100 million company, but their main product was they did online gambling. And they had recently purchased, for whatever reason, don't get me started, a number of plastic surgery clinics in Florida. And they wanted to unify these plastic surgery clinics under one brand. And they were going to hire me to be the technical architect to build the software that would unify all of these practices. Now, salary-wise, they were only about $5,000 away from each other. So salary wasn't the issue. Team-wise, I would have been working with more experienced people at the one in the Dominion building, but I would have been in charge at the one with the plastic surgery. And despite all of my experience, the thing that swayed me was that the second company, the plastic surgery company, had their offices in the new convention center right over the Irish pub on the corner where the Big Blue Teardrop is. So my office was literally right up against a window, looking out over the water, seeing the mountains. It was gorgeous. I got swayed by the office. 3 months after I took that job, the other company sold to IBM, and they had offered me 1.7% equity. So, yeah, even experienced people make dumb employment decisions. That being said, had I taken that job and kept working for them, I would still be working for IBM, and I wouldn't have come and taught here. I was so miserable at the other job that I was looking for a way to get out, and that was right when I met Jeremy and Crum, and the rest is history. So, I mean, it worked out, but yeah, that's my own personal story of making a really bad employment decision because the office was gorgeous. That should not be the reason you take a job. Yeah, that company ended up telling me I had to do it all myself. They wouldn't hire me a junior. I only got 10% of a designer's time, and I had to build a full practice management software. So like scheduling and appointment and electronic health records and a whole CRM backend that allowed them to do marketing analysis on their customers, on the patients. And I was supposed to just magically do it all myself and just design it myself. And yeah, kind of miserable. That's why I quit. So, you know, those kind of stories come up because you end up focusing on the wrong things. I want you to focus, as you're coming out of this program, on getting the experience of being a professional dev. That's what's going to make the difference. Go build things. And so with that also comes the message of stay humble. Stay humble because you're coming out on top of this program. You're coming out feeling like, hey, I can build all these cool things. Look at this final project I built. And that's a big boost. But stay humble. Recognize that you do have a lot to learn. Recognize that there are a lot of things that the team you're going to be working with are going to be able to teach you, that you're going to learn from the product, from the code you're going to read. Some of it is going to be amazing. Some of it's going to be complete garbage. But that doesn't make you better than that code, because even if you look at code in the product that is complete garbage, you don't know what the path was to get to that point so that that code worked. You can't criticize it. You have to stay humble. You may have an opportunity to make it better. That may be one of the things that you got hired for. But the truth is, you staying humble means that you're continually going to be given the opportunity to add more, to contribute, to grow, to learn new things. A lot of companies now are doing professional development budgets for employees, meaning that's money that you can use to buy resources online, to take extra courses, to go to conferences. When you find that, take advantage of it. Stay humble about that stuff and make sure that whatever benefit you do get out of it, you're looping back into your employer. That's what makes the huge difference. That's what makes you a successful and respected member of the community, as opposed to somebody who just phones it in. You know, if you became a developer because you thought it was going to be a great way for you to just phone in a job, sorry, McDonald's is still hiring. Quick show of hands, who's interested in becoming a freelancer? Okay, Benji, where do you get your clients? Yeah, and how much do you charge per hour? Couple of years experience freelancing? Oh, good. Good answer. Yeah. And if any of you were thinking about that, let me caution you now. I'm going to do my best not to be dogmatic about this. But, yeah. One of the truths about freelancing, we all have this image of freelancing, is that you're sitting on a lawn chair on a beach in Maui with a Mai Tai next to you. You've got your laptop out with your Wi-Fi stick, and you're just able to casually code away. And you know, you submit to GitHub, you push to GitHub, it magically deploys to the cloud. Clients are happy, they're electronically transferring you money, and you're living the good life. No. No, it's really no. I've done freelance 2 different times in my career. In both cases, I opened up my own web design company, which was me sitting in my living room coding. And in both cases, and all of the other freelancers I've ever talked to, there are certain truths that come out. The first is that no matter how much you might want it to be true, there's no boutique shop down on Water Street that you just walk into and get web dev clients. Like, you know, they don't come in case lots at Costco. There's no kiosk in the mall where you can just pick up one when you need it. You, like Benji said, you have to hustle to get clients. And one of the things with freelancing that is a little bit of a challenge is that until you have a couple years of experience shipping software and knowing what, you know, how to plan for what you don't know yet, you can't give accurate estimates to clients as to how long it's going to take you to build something. You can't even estimate for yourself how long it's going to take you to learn the things you need to know to be able to build whatever you're being asked to build. And when you're late on a deadline, that's on you. You don't get to charge extra for it. You're working for free now. The free in freelancing is not about you being free from the confines of the corporate establishment. It's about you running the risk of getting lanced and by a bad deadline and having to work for free. The other thing is about what to charge per hour. So typically the formula is whatever you would charge per hour, you multiply that times 2,000, and that's what your yearly wage is. So, you know, 50 bucks an hour would be $100,000 a year. Sounds great. That assumes that you have 40 hours of work every week. Because when you go get a job with a dev company and they pay you, say, 50 grand a year, that 50 grand is what you get on top of the office, the desk, the power, the Wi-Fi, the, you know, maybe they pay for your cell phone, maybe they pay for your GitHub subscription, maybe they buy you a machine to work on so you don't have to worry about the wear and tear on your own machine. There's a coffee machine in the office so you don't have to pay for your own coffee. That's the 50 grand you get above and beyond those costs. When you're a freelancer, you're paying for all of that, plus your bus pass, plus your rent or your mortgage or your lease, plus your car, you know, if you have one. If you're buying a bicycle to be, you know, environmentally friendly and economical and just get some exercise, well, they're not paying for that either. You're paying for that. And unless you have enough clients that you have 40 hours of work every week, you then have to charge extra. As a general rule, as a freelancer, charging less than 50 bucks an hour is bankrupting yourself. And if you only have one client, you have to hope you can charge them enough to live off of. And if that project is only 2 or 3 weeks long, well, that covers the next month's rent, and that's it. Where's the next one come from? Again, there's no vending machine that you can just pop out a client. So 40% of your time is spent running your business. That's contracts, that's finding clients, that's going to meetings that you don't get paid for to meet with a potential client and see what they want you to build. That's dealing with chasing money. Nobody likes chasing money. Have you ever borrowed, had somebody borrow money from you and then you had to chase them down to get it back? 10x that. Because people don't like to pay freelancers. Contract people, if you work for Lighthouse and you get contracted to build a mural, you've got a good guarantee that Lighthouse is going to pay you. If you are, Joe's Noodle Shop and you hire somebody to build your website and you don't have a good week selling noodles, you don't pay your web developer. Why? Because you have to worry about paying your employees and your rent first. If you don't have that going on, it doesn't matter whether you have a website or not. So you choose, as a business owner, who you're going to pay and when based on cash flow. And so if you're not having a good week, you've got to take care of home first, and your web developer, they're just going to have to wait. Well, if you're the web developer, how does that help you? Anytime you want to think about freelancing, go read the site Clients from Hell. If you've never found that site, you will be like in pain from your ribs from laughing at the things that go on there. And the worst part is they're true stories. My favorite one from there was, well, I want to pay you, but the horses didn't do as well as I expected this week. Can I pay you in cocaine? True story. So I was living over on the island in Nanaimo before I moved to Vancouver in 2005. And so that was where I started my first web dev company. And I got paid with a live chicken one time. Because I had fixed somebody's plugin on WordPress. And it literally took me like an afternoon to do it. It wasn't even a big job. But they had some custom plugin that somebody had built for them that then they upgraded WordPress and the plugin broke. So they needed my help. Okay, cool. So I helped them out and they're like, come by, you can pick up your payment. I'm like, cool, that I'm actually getting paid this time. This is awesome. And I walk in and they've got a cage with a chicken. They're like, here you go. This is worth, X number of dollars. So, I figured I'd just give you this. I lived in an apartment. I literally looked at them. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? And they're like, well, bake at 350. Like, I wish I could make this story up, but no, I got paid with a chicken. I got paid in pizza and beer a lot. The island, obviously, slightly different culture. But yeah, you can't turn around and hand your landlord a chicken and say, this covers my rent, right? No. No. Fortunately, I knew somebody who had a farm, and I gave it to him, and he gave me 50 bucks for the chicken. The original price I had quoted the person for the WordPress plugin work was 200 bucks. That was what I got. I had to deal with that. So I took a loss on that. Basically, I worked for 3 hours for free, is what it ended up being. Now, the thing is, I don't want to tell you these stories for the purpose of scaring you away from doing freelancing. Freelancing can be incredibly rewarding because of the variety of things that you get to work on. But what I am going to encourage you is that get some experience first. Figure out what shipping software looks like. Figure out what billing looks like. Figure out how much time it does actually take you to build things, and then decide if you want to do freelancing. Fortunately, our world is one that you can be a digital nomad. When we did a satellite class up in Whitehorse in the Yukon, our very first satellite cohort was in the Yukon. Um, there's a developer up there who is originally from BC, but he is a developer and his wife is a designer. They own an RV, and they have driven literally from Alaska to the tip of Chile and Argentina down at the bottom of South America, and they just regularly drive back and forth. Yukon is home for them, but they're digital nomads. They've got a satellite dish on top of their RV that gives them internet. And so they just take jobs and they can be wherever they want to be, which is kind of cool. So yeah, that's some food for thought when it comes to freelancing. Let's go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, a couple things I want to talk about are how Lighthouse will continue to support you. I want to leave some time at the end so that you guys basically have like an AMA session where you literally can ask me anything. But yeah, I want to talk about the Lighthouse community and what that's going to look like for you coming out of the bootcamp. Okay. I know some people are still grabbing coffee, but they can catch up. Yeah, it's like the line at the methadone clinic over on Hastings. Um, so I said I wanted to talk about how Lighthouse will support you. And it's one of the things that we are most proud of, truthfully, is how we have built a community around developers here in Canada, and truthfully that has now gone worldwide. And in the proper way, not in the pitbull way. Lighthouse was actually started for that exact purpose, to change the developer community in Canada. And one of the things we realized about that was extremely important was it wasn't enough to just get people started in a career. We had to be able to continue to support them. We had to be able to help them grow. We had to be a central focal point that could be, kind of like a community hub. We had to be able to offer further growth opportunities. And more than anything else, we had to keep that community engaged with what was going on and growing out of this space. And we've done a pretty good job of all of those things. So there's a few things that you will always have. Access to Compass. As long as there is a boot camp, you will have access to the curriculum. You won't have access to the exact same curriculum that you saw going through the boot camp, because some of the stuff in the first couple weeks has already changed since you saw it. You will always have access to whatever the most current curriculum is, which is actually a good thing for you. Going back and reading about the old version of React or the old version of Active Record doesn't help you, truthfully. That's what Stack Overflow is for. So what you will have is access to whatever we are considering is the latest, greatest, newest version of what we are doing. And that will stay forever and ever. The second thing you will always have access to is career services. So right now, Bernadette and Hillary are working with you to get you jobs, to get interviews lined up for you, to make sure your resumes are in shape, to make sure you're feeling comfortable about going into interviews. We've put you through tech interview practice, and we want that to continue. We want that to be something that you use as a resource as you continue to grow. So whether it's Bernadette or Bob or Sally or whoever is in that particular job, that's someone you can always come back to and say, hey, I'm coming up, there's this big interview I've got coming up. Hey, do you know anybody hiring intermediates? Hey, I'm thinking about getting into more front end. Do you know somebody who's hiring in that particular area? I finally have my big Facebook interview. Can I get time to practice that? Can I get somebody to look over my resume? All of those things that you have asked for in the past 9 weeks from Career Services continues to happen. And that is something that we are committed to being able to give to you. The third thing that's something you will always have access to is mentorship. Now, not quite the same as what you got in the boot camp. Again, there's no more green button that you get to click on and just summon somebody to your side. But what you are able to do is you're going to be able to email Davey or whoever the education manager is, and you're going to say, hey, I'm stuck on this thing I'm doing at work, or hey, I'm working on a side project and I can't figure out what to do. Hey, I need some career advice. Hey, I need somebody to help me debug something. All those things that you might have called a mentor over for before, plus career advice. You can then schedule time to come in, and it might be a 20-minute session, it might be a 1-hour session, and it might be me or Joel or Sam or Carl or whoever, but you can continue to get mentorship. Now, it's not something that you can leverage multiple times a week. It's not something that, every one of you can call for every single day. But periodically, once a week probably would be about the maximum we could logistically support, because we're human too. Yeah, feel free to come in and get that support. Because now what we're able to do sitting down with you for 20, 30, 45 minutes is a lot more targeted and a lot more specific than what you would have been getting in like a 5-10 minute mentor session before. Now we're talking about bigger things that are more complex. And so that's something that's always open to you. You can continue to come back. I have graduates from literally the very first cohort I taught here that still come back and do mentor sessions. I mean, sometimes, admittedly, the mentor sessions are at Shabine and they're buying me whiskey. But, and I'm not averse to that, just for what it's worth. Calgary has whiskey too. No, seriously, like, you are welcome to come in and get our help. Yeah, Ben. We'll do remote. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, you know, Skype works almost as well. Skype appear in Slack calls, like, it's all an option. It doesn't matter where in the world you are. In fact, let's say that you move to Toronto tomorrow. Don't, but it's an ugly place. You could walk into the Lighthouse office there and get the exact same treatment that you would get here. We just wouldn't know you quite as well there. You know, I might get a message on Slack going, who the hell's this guy? But the thing is, it doesn't matter whether it's Lighthouse here, Calgary, whether you live in Brisbane, Australia, we will help you. We have graduates in Tokyo. We have graduates in London. We have graduates in Belize. We have graduates in New York. We have graduates in Miami, Florida. Glasgow, Scotland. We actually have somebody in Australia, not in Brisbane, they're in Sydney. We've got graduates in Uganda. We've got graduates in China. We've got graduates in Brazil. Literally all over the place. And we're offering support to all of them. You know, and if we had, you know, we've had over 1,000 graduates just from Vancouver alone, and if all of them came for support in the same week, well, Joel and I wouldn't sleep for a long time, but you know, we'd be violating rule number 3. But yeah, we would still do our best to offer that support, because that's important to us, that you have us as a resource to continue to grow with. We've, as much as you've paid us money, we've invested in you guys, and we're proud of you. We want to see you succeed. We want to see you grow. From the moment that we accepted you into the program, it became Lighthouse's, you know, challenge and mission to make you a successful dev. That's why we're not interested in kicking people out if we don't have to. That's why we're offering the levels of support that we have, because we want to see you succeed. You know, you passed all of our tests to make sure that you were ready to do boot camp and that you are the right candidate, so we want to continue to pay that back. You know, you chose us. So yeah, that's something that is always available to you. Calgary, if you guys want a local mentor there, obviously we've got some great ones. In fact, we've got a couple new ones that this cohort hasn't met yet, but they're amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's always available to you. One of the other things I will go ahead and throw out is that because you're sitting in this room, because you've completed the course, there's a certain level of respect that we have for you, which means if you want to use me as a reference when you are going for a job, please feel free to do so. You're sitting in this room, so I have nothing but kind things to say. I mean, we might need to discuss promptness. Hey, Benji. You know, when an employer calls me and asks me about Benji, one thing I'll be able to say is he was the last one to leave the office. I just won't give any other context than that. We gave him lots of problems and told him to sleep on it, and he did. Yeah, those are ways that we will continue to offer you support. There are other ways for you to get support and to push yourself forward that I encourage you to seek out. Find the meetups. You know, Vancouver JavaScript. Vancouver has React meetups. Vancouver has Ruby meetups. Vancouver has PHP meetups. You're going to want to go and you're going to want to find those. You're going to want to engage with that community. There is a Slack group that is specifically, it's called YVR Dev. You go to yvrdev.com and you just put in your email and you'll get an invite to the Slack group. And that is a community that is over 3,000 developers here just in Vancouver alone. There are people from every company you can imagine, like Slack and Microsoft and security companies. And you want to know something about a company, you want to know something about a technology, there is a channel there for that. You're going to get moved, for example, right now you're on the Lighthouse student Slack, you're going to get moved over to the Lighthouse alumni Slack. Again, thousands of people, anybody who has ever gone through our program, anybody who's ever been a mentor, anybody who's ever been a teacher is on this group worldwide. Could you ask for a better resource if you need information about something? There's a web alumni channel that is literally every graduate of our web dev program ever. So you're stuck on something, you need help debugging, you have a question about a library, that's the place to put it. These resources are out there and available to you, and a lot of what we want to do is unlock those resources for you, because now that you are completing the boot camp, now that you are about to go out and be on your own and get thrown out of the nest and have to fly, that kind of support is the kind of thing we want to show you that is out there, because that community matters. The other thing to keep in mind is that you do have an opportunity to push your skills forward in a very different way, which is finding ways to mentor others. Think about all the benefit that you've gotten from the mentorship and the instruction from the senior devs that have been in this space. There's organizations like Canada Learning Code, Women Who Code. There's a bunch of community classes that pop up from time to time where people are looking for developers to come and give back and to share their knowledge with people who are wanting to start. Maybe people who aren't interested in becoming a developer the way you guys were and therefore are willing to, check out of their life for 10 weeks and take a boot camp, but people who still want to learn these skills. You don't have to worry about whether you know enough to go and be a mentor. You're going to know more than they do, and that's the key piece. You're going to get to take the lessons that you have learned and the insights that you have gained and turn around and share them with others. And I will tell you from very personal experience, nothing makes you a better developer than figuring out how to explain one of the concepts that you just have now internally to someone else. Explaining why HTML works the way it does. Explaining how CSS specificity actually works. Explaining what a React component actually is and what the architecture does and why they would want to think about it that way and build an app using that structure. Being able to answer those questions for someone else and watching that light bulb go on, even if it's just a candle, is incredibly rewarding. Like, in the veins, baby. Like, it is good stuff. And, I mean, it's why I do what I do. It's why I'm excited to be up here, teaching you guys, because I've fought all those battles already, right? But getting yourself involved in those kinds of organizations gives you an opportunity to not only push your own skills further by forcing yourself to answer those questions, but you now become the person in the community that student learned code from. That's kind of a cool place to be. That's the contribution that I was talking about earlier. That's that place where you're automatically going to get respect and credibility because you were able to teach them how to do HTML or how to write a loop in Python or whatever it is you're sharing. There's also mentorship opportunities here, our intro courses that we do in the evenings. We typically reach for alumni to teach those courses. But they're alumni who have gone and gotten the experience in the industry, alumni who can stand up in front of a class and credibly say, hey, this is what I think is the way that you should be learning this material. We provide the curriculum. You just need to be willing to be that person, that authority that shares that. We look to our alumni to mentor and teach those courses because we know that you know the material you need to be able to do that. But go get some experience first. One of the things you've also probably noticed is that we have alumni that mentor the boot camp. Those alumni have gone and got experience. And we believe in those people and their ability to come back and share their knowledge with you. But we need them to go get experience. We need that 3 to 6 months minimum where you have been out in the industry and getting the knowledge about how to deploy things, how to actually behave as a dev on a team, what project management looks like. That's what makes the difference between your ability to contribute to the boot camp. Because imagine if I was to take you back, say, 3 weeks to React. Yeah, it was that long ago. I know in boot camp years, that's like a semester of university. But if I was to take you back 3 weeks and you click that button and the person that comes over says, oh yeah, I just graduated last week. What can I help you with? You probably wouldn't have the same confidence in them. But if they're like, oh yeah, I'm a dev for blah, 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 and I took the course before, very different scenario. One of the rules we have for our teaching staff, for our mentors, for our instructors, is that you have to be an active dev. So go become a dev. Go make sure that this is something that you're passionate about. Go get that experience. Go get the the war stories that you're able to share with someone. And then we're happy to have you come back and share your knowledge. Because I know from mentoring them as mentors that the alumni mentors we have here are extremely valuable. You know, Rebecca, for instance. Rebecca's awesome. Yeah, she went through the program, but then she went and got tons of dev experience. And then she came back, and now she's a great contributor to the community. So those are the kinds of things we are looking for and the kinds of community opportunities that are available to you, and I encourage you to take advantage of them because they will make a difference in your ability to move forward. Very fortunately, our industry isn't much of a who-you-know industry. It helps from a networking perspective. Somebody you know who works at another company may be able to give you a heads up on an opportunity. Somebody you know who works with a technology is like, hey, there's something really cool coming down the pipe, let me show you how it works. That stuff can help, but it's not like sales. It's not like marketing where if you don't know the 3 people who are in charge of the company, you're never getting a job there. So be willing to show that you contribute, because especially when those kinds of things start going on your resume, that makes a tremendous difference in how somebody views you. That's what makes you stand out from somebody else who just has Tiny App, Chatty, Jungle, a final project. That's what makes you stand out, is what you are willing to contribute. So, you know, if you're worried from a career perspective about how do you push yourself forward, those are the ways. And, you know, without exception, you are always welcome back here. This, you know, we want you to think of this as a home base. This is a place where every demo day, every public event, every celebration we have, every time we're bringing people into this space to show off what Lighthouse is and what Lighthouse does, we want you here. You're in this room, you finished our course, we're really fucking proud of you. So we want you to be willing to celebrate that. You know, show up, wear your shirt, be willing to answer questions that other people are going to have, because they're going to have the same questions that you had 2 months ago. And that gets you out into the community, because you're not going to be the only people in the room. There's going to be employers in the room. There's going to be investors in the room. There's going to be people who are looking to start companies in the room. That's what makes the difference for you. That's what changes people's attitude about you being devs. From just being an employee that we could have, okay, yeah, they might be able to do the job, to this is somebody that's passionate, that I actually want to see sitting in my company, that I think has a future and can grow. Those are the things that make the difference. So that's basically everything I wanted to share with you guys today in terms of a message as far as what's going to come next. The good news is we've still got 35 minutes, probably, before they come out, because Sam tends to run until 11. And so for both you guys here and for Calgary, I've got my phone open. I want to know what questions you've got. Literally, you can ask me anything, and I'll try not to answer anything that I have to turn off the stream for. But feel free to fire away. Well, what's the first one that pops to mind? Oh, great question. So for Calgary, what's my opinion on going through open source stuff after graduation? Open source contribution is one of the best ways you can get a foot into kind of the mainstream culture of development. And a lot of people get intimidated initially by doing open source contributions because they're like, oh, well, I can't code at that level. Every ticket, every issue that's up on that GitHub repo isn't developing the most complex algorithm that's ever existed. Sometimes it's doesn't redirect when you click this button, and you're going and changing, an event handler or something like that. Look at the issues and think, especially pick the modules that you've used a lot. Look at things that you've interacted with a lot. Maybe it's just a change in documentation. Maybe that's the first step that you make. Fixing a typo, adding a paragraph to clarify something, especially because that paragraph clarifies something that you struggled with when you were starting to use that library and you figured it out. That's a great way to start. And then there will be that first code contribution. And you may get your first 25 PRs completely and totally shot down, but the comments you're going to get back are going to be informative. They're going to move you forward. And then, again, speaking from experience, when you have that first open source PR that gets approved, and you can now literally say, I am a contributor to whatever library, it's awesome. Like, that is an awesome feeling. Go out and get yourself a great dinner that night, because you have now contributed back to the community. And they don't have to be the big ones like Express or Bcrypt. You don't have to go and get your PhD in cryptography to go and contribute to Bcrypt. Go find some of the smaller ones, like some of the React plugins that you might have used. Go find ones like even old jQuery plugins. jQuery is still valid. It's still on 60% of the top 10,000 sites in the world. So go find jQuery plugins. Go find Webpack stuff, something where there's just a bug that you can go and fix. Sure, it might take you a week to do it. Well, guess what? That's now your side project. When B emails you and like, hey, what have you been working on since you graduated? Oh, I'm fixing this really weird bug in this library, and so I'm going to contribute to open source. I promise I'm going to get this done. I may come in and get a mentor session with Don to talk about it, but I'm going to get this in, and we're going to get this pushed. That's the kind of thing you want to push yourself to do. Don't get intimidated. Don't let the imposter syndrome keep you from doing open source contributions. Open source exists because people had the courage to go, you know what, there's something more important than my being intimidated. Like literally, I've got that tattooed on my arm because it's a mantra. Courage is deciding that there's something more important than being scared. So don't be scared of it. Don't be intimidated by it. Go find, even if it's something that just got published on NPM, go look at what the first 100 packages or last 100 packages were that were published on NPM. Check out their GitHub repo, see if they've got issues. These are probably products that are in their infancy, and you can jump on board and be contributing to it. So the question is, when you're on GitHub, like, how do you look up issues? So up at the top for every repo, there's going to be a tab that is issues. So if you, for example, go look at like github.com/rails/rails, there's a tab at the top that says issues, and then there's filters at the top where you can see like the open ones, the closed ones. It should be right below the little search box under issues. And so you want to look for the open issues, because those are the ones that haven't been solved yet, and read through and like, okay, I know all those words, but not in that order. Okay, okay, this one makes sense. Let me click on that. Click on that, read the description of the issue. Most times, issues get filed with that, here's the steps to reproduce them. So go do Rails new blah, and then try and reproduce that issue. And then once you're pretty sure that you can confidently reproduce it, well, then go figure out where the Rails code is that's running that particular thing, and see if you can think about what to do to fix that bug. You're good at fixing bugs. You've been doing it for the past 2 weeks past week building a final project. You've been doing it for the past 9 weeks building software here. You know how to debug. You know how to approach those problems. Do the pseudocode first. Figure out the logic, the syntax, and the data. You have those skills to be able to contribute. Don't be intimidated just because it's some big fancy project. Find the small ones. Remove the intimidation. Good question, though. So the question is, what about making, node modules? Like, you mean like making something and publishing at 10 p.m.? Oh, yeah, do that. It's great. Definitely do that. If you find that there's some tool or some little thing that you need to do frequently, or something that you've written a function for, and you're like, you know what, this could probably help somebody else, clean up the code, write some tests for it, publish an NPM module. Publishing an NPM module is really, really easy. Like, it's something you can learn in 5 minutes. I'll tell you another thing that's very similar to doing NPM modules that is equally valuable. Build Chrome extensions or Firefox extensions. They're easy to do. It's just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and you add a manifest.json file. But you can build extensions in React. You can build extensions that use jQuery. You can build extensions that use Angular. You can build extensions that now connect to a backend and have a SQL database, or connect them to Firebase, or connect them to something. They don't have to be just in the browser. It can be a full product in and of itself. But Chrome extensions are awesome because Chrome extensions can directly modify pages. And so if there's something about, I don't know, Reddit that you've never liked, oh, it would be so much better if the arrows for upvoting were over here on this side. Great, write a Chrome extension that every time it loads Reddit, finds that, changes the CSS to move those arrows over there. Ta-da, you've just contributed something to the community. We've seen Chrome extensions that do things like every time the words, well, if you're looking at Twitter, all Donald Trump's tweets appear in Comic Sans in color, like he's writing with a crayon. Those kinds of things, sure, it's tongue-in-cheek, but that's a genuine problem. How do you figure out which tweets are his? And then, how do you target that with CSS? How do you, what would the CSS be that would actually change the display of just those tweets and nobody else's? That's a great Saturday challenge right there. And then you get to publish it, and then it goes on your resume. Made this extension. It doesn't matter whether it's tongue-in-cheek and flippant. I mean, Sam, his first app that he published on the iOS store that has had the most downloads is like a cat piano. It's like a little cat playing piano. But it's had like, I think something like 50,000 downloads. That's success. That's contribution. I don't care if you build a fart app or something that makes a rim shot noise, or, build something, contribute something. Yeah, NPM modules are great. Ruby gems are great. jQuery plugins are great. There's still an ecosystem for jQuery. Low barrier to entry, too. So, yeah, Alethea. Mm-hmm. I love this question. Keep going. Mm-hmm. Yep. I love how you said this was hypothetical. So the hypothetical question that Alethea has asked, yet, at least not since 9 o'clock this morning. The hypothetical question is, and I'm going to paraphrase, but it's asking about what are called hybrid roles, which are roles that are not 100% dev. Is it valid to take a role that is not 100% the title software developer? Is it smart? Yes. You're in the tech industry. You're still getting paid to code, and you're getting paid to interface, for example, with the clients that are using the code. The people who actually use the product you're building. Those are great people to get to know. You cannot look at friends and family and have them be your guinea pigs for every possible product case, because they're just not. Um, if I was to come in and ask all of you to test out the latest TIG welder, sure, you might be able to make a spark or set the building on fire or something, but you wouldn't necessarily be the best users for that particular product. And if any of you are certified as TIG welders, well, fantastic. But the thing is, there are a few different types of roles that we have in our industry that I encourage everyone to look at. For example, business analyst and business intelligence roles. Developer is nowhere in that title. You're going to write a ton of code. You're going to write a ton of one-off scripts, very similar to what you did in the first week, but at a much larger scale. You're going to write a lot of scripts to do a lot of queries to crunch a lot of data. BA and BI roles are the mix of DevOps, software developer, data science, and business reporting. But people shy away from them as developer roles because it says business analyst or business intelligence, and you don't have an MBA, right? And if you do, you're like, but I just went and became a software dev. Why would I take a business job? Because you're writing code and generating reports. You're probably going to have to build web front ends for the reports you're building. You're going to have to do all kinds of crazy stuff with Excel and macros, which is still coding. You're going to have to be very good at SQL, or you're going to have to get very good at SQL, one of the two. Most of the time with SQL, we can be average and survive quite well as an average SQL dev. You're going to be dealing with joins that are this big on the screen, like a query that you actually have to scroll to get from the top to the bottom up. And that's on a Retina screen. There's some really amazing stuff that BA and BI people do every single day. And they're typically dealing with very large amounts of data. So you don't have to just go and work for some big data analytics company to get access to running those kinds of queries and doing that kind of analysis. You can get it by looking at the quarterly reports for PricewaterhouseCoopers. They've got BA and BI roles that are dealing with databases that are almost petabytes in size, because they're dealing with financial data for, I don't know, Amazon. That's a lot of data to be playing with. So that's one area. Another one, go 2 floors down to Unbounce. Unbounce has what they call their client support representative. And a client support representative sounds like you would be on a phone, thank you for calling Unbounce. My name is Bob, how may I help you? No. What you're doing is you're helping devs who are trying to implement Unbounce do that. So that means you're helping people who write code. And guess what? If you're particularly good at that and you can solve a whole bunch of technical problems, you're sitting right next to the dev team for Unbounce. Everybody that we have had that's graduated from here into the client support roles at Unbounce is now a dev at Unbounce. QA. So who here has ever worked in a restaurant? Okay. Are you now a better customer because you've worked in a restaurant? You don't, turn the cream upside down. You don't loosen the top on the salt. You don't pour ketchup all over the plate just for fun. You hopefully stop doing those things, hopefully. Yeah, become a QA because you want to do that for at least 6 months of your career. If you go become a professional driver like taxi or Uber or something like that, you're going to be really appreciative of the people that drive you around after that because you know what they're going through. Well, as soon as you go become a QA, you get to see all the crappy code that people pass off as working. And you're going to have to, pardon me, you're going to have to write a lot of code to test the code that is being given to you to validate that it's ready for deployment. And you are then become the last line of defense between a working product and a non-working product. That role is actually vital. And unfortunately, QAs only exist at mid-sized companies and above. So there aren't as many roles out there, but they are 100% in demand. It's estimated right now that there's approximately 150 QA roles that are not filled in Vancouver alone by itself. That's more than people in this room. So even if you started off your career as a QA, that's going to be fantastic for you as a dev, and think about what it's going to look like 2 years from now when you go to get a job with an employer and they're like, oh, you have QA experience, so you actually care about quality. All right, that's a differentiator. That's something that makes a difference. Other things that you can do that you'll find roles that are hybrid marketing roles, where you're building a lot of HTML emails, which is its own particular hell, but you're also building a lot of one-off sites. For example, the Canucks have an in-house developer. They've hired from us a couple times. And that in-house developer, every time the Canucks put up one of those little like one-off contest pages, or hey, we're going to feature the Sedins back when they were on the team, or hey, you know, it's the run to the cup, or whatever it might be, every time one of those pages goes up, you're building it, but it's a marketing role. You're building a site for the marketing team, but you're still coding. Don't be afraid of those roles. If you're applying for that role and you're a developer, they know that you're a developer. And if they're like, oh, well, you might code, you know, once a month, well, yeah, run screaming. Like, get away from that as quick as possible. But if they're like, you're, you know, this is like 40% dev and 50% this and 10% something else, you're still coding. You're still getting experience. And when you go to the next company and they ask you what you did, well, I built this and this and this and this and this. And I also did these other things, so I have experience in these areas now. And they're like, cool, here's a job doing way more dev. You know, in fact, you get to say, why did you leave that job? Well, you know, I really just wanted to do more development, but I'm really glad I got that experience. Because that, at the end of the day, is what you're getting, is the experience doing it. But yeah, don't shy away from those roles, because there's some tremendous work that you get to do in roles that aren't labeled explicitly as developer. Advertising agencies, actually, when you're like building ad placements. When I was at Metrolyrics, one of the hats I had to wear was I was in charge of all of the ad placements on the site. And Metrolyrics made all of its money from ad placements. But yeah, I had to build custom things that would like grow and move all over the site, and wraps that would go around the site and still be clickable, and you know, interstitial modal stuff. Like, I had to do all kinds of crazy invention to get some of the ad things that like iTunes wanted to do and things like that. I mean, technically my title was dev, but this was in support of advertising at that particular point. And there are people who work for ad agencies that just do that. You know, every single one of those ads that you see that sits, you know, pops up in a 300 by 250 box, or a banner ad or something like that, and then you click on it and it grows or plays a game, somebody had to build that. So, but you might have a job in advertising. So yeah, also payment processors, like PayPal, or there's Payfirma, or a couple other payment, other payment processors in town. Yeah, you're going to work for, you're doing payments, but you're also building either the front end or the back end that's processing the payment. So that's another place that you can get a job. So is it practical to go and learn another language? Okay, so is it valuable to learn a non-practical language? I'll go back to something I said earlier. Every line of code you write in any language makes you better in all of them. There are some really cool next languages to learn. Like, I would encourage everybody to go learn Python. I would encourage everybody to go learn Go. I would encourage everybody to go learn Rust. If you really like the functional programming aspect of JavaScript, go learn either Rust or Haskell. If you really liked back-end programming and making things go fast, go learn Go or Python. If you really like working with data, learn Python. If you really liked this, just having apps that were super blazing fast, there's Erlang and Elixir. There are great languages that are out there that do different things better than the languages you know now, or at least do them differently. And you will never suffer from learning another language. there's also like lol code and brainfuck and languages like that, which are just out there as like complete humor, even though technically they do work. If you're a web dev and you decide to go learn C++, why? Like, are you now chasing application development? Are you going to start building libraries for webcams? Or like, what is it that's driving you to now learn a low-level systems language? Do you decide to go learn how to program in assembly so that you're literally pushing bits and bytes through memory? Why? I mean, it's not a bad thing, but you have to ask why. What's the end goal? One of the things that a lot of people do coming out of boot camp is they try and make decisions going forward. Well, what's the next thing I should do? Wrong way to think about it. Go to the calendar and put a sticky note on April 26th, 2019. That's 6 months from today. What do you want to be able to do on that day? What type of apps do you want to be building? What projects do you want to have delivered? What contributions do you want to have made at that point? Pick that date and then work backwards. Figure out what you need to do to be able to do that thing that you want to do in 6 months. Farther out from 6 months is hard to plan. Everyone's supposed to have the 5-year plan of what your goals are. Our industry changes too quick for that. In 5 years, we could all be like jacking in with a Wi-Fi chip in our head and just thinking the code. We don't know. Unlikely, but still could happen if Elon Musk has his way. So pick a date 6 months out and figure out what you want to have built by that point. And then work backwards. Figure out what you need to learn to build that. Yesterday Sam had the car running around. If that was cool to you and the idea of like Arduinos and microbits and Raspberry Pis and that kind of stuff is really cool and you want to get into that, well, that charts the path of what the next 3 or 4 things you're going to need to learn are and what you're going to need to work on. If 6 months from now you're like, I want to be building Electron apps and I want to have some cool app that runs on the desktop, that runs on multiple machines. Yeah, exactly. Then now you know what you need to do to work back. Are you interested in financial tech? Are you interested in medical tech? Are you interested in the lovely new industry we have called Canatech? I'll let you figure out what that one's for. It's green and makes you eat Doritos. So, I mean, you have to figure out what you want to build and then work backwards rather than worrying about what you're going to learn tomorrow. Because the thing is, up until this point, you came into the course going, I want to be a web dev. We did the work back for you. We built a curriculum that started from today of, hey, you know how to build anything you want. And we worked back to, welcome to Lighthouse. This is day 1. You have no idea what you're about to start. So you have to do the same thing for yourself now. Pick something, pick some date 3 to 6 months out and ask yourself what you want to be doing and then work back. Figure out what you have to learn to get there because now you have the context to be able to make those decisions. Now you know enough of the industry to go, okay, well, I'm going to need to get better at this. I'm going to need to learn this. I probably need this library. Let me go Google for a few things. Okay, I'm going to build a project with that and that and that. And that might take you 3 small projects to get to the point that on that date 6 months from now you're ready to start building that thing. And that's okay. Because it puts you in the position where you are now charting your path to success. And it doesn't have to be about where you work. It's all about the tech that you are choosing to learn for yourself going forward. What's next? Yeah, Ben.
What kind of roles do you see like either like content experts or in that area of the tech community?
Right.
What kind of roles do they have?
Okay, so the question is, what kind of roles are there for people like content experts in tech companies? There's a huge role because one of the things that our industry has finally figured out in the past 3 to 5 years is that all of this tech is meaningless if you have no content to base it around. We've finally gotten to the point that we realize that HTML is pointless if you don't have any content to mark up. We went for this huge period from about 1995 until about 2007, where we're like, hey, let's just build things because they look cool. This tag makes this. This tag makes it look like this. Oh, here, let's add this JavaScript. Oh, here, let's reinvent CSS so that it does what we want it to do. And all of a sudden, we're like, yeah, we're browsing the web, and we're not finding anything. It's like having 350 channels of satellite TV and nothing to watch. So content all of a sudden became king. And there was a brief period from about 2005 to about 2010 where the content industry was getting owned by something called article spinners. And for those of you who don't know this term, article spinners are both brilliant and terrible at the same time. So let's take, imagine the Wikipedia page of your life. Now let's suck in that content to an article spinner, and let's spit it back out slightly modified. Synonyms get replaced. Adverbs get, tweaked just a little bit. Very becomes extremely, or extremely becomes very. So that the content is just slightly different. Still the same content, but, whereas, it might say Don did this here and here, it suddenly changes to Mr. Burks did this here and here. So that the content is just different enough. Typically, it's between 11 and 17% is the change. So then that gets posted on another site. And no one can say that it got copied from Wikipedia because it's just different enough. Active voice would be changed to passive voice, or passive voice to active voice. So it would slightly rewrite or spin the content so that it looked different, it felt different, and then you could write the content once or pay somebody overseas like $5 to write this article for you, run it through an article spinner, and you've now got 40 copies of the same content that you can put up on 40 different sites and put ads on all of them. Google caught on to that really quick. And I say really quick, I mean it took a couple years for them to really be able to nail down how to detect it. And now article spinning is like you will die in a fiery SEO grave if you do article spinning. And we have finally reached a point where on the internet we care about authentic, genuine content. And that becomes the backbone of a lot of companies. Typically, once a company is about to do their public launch, one of the most important hires that they are going to hire, and again, it's into their marketing department, is a content specialist. Because that content specialist has to know, A, how to write the content, and B, how to present it on the web. So content specialists become experts in CMS systems, content management systems, either building them or using them. They become experts in things like typography and how that gets presented, fonts and typography and the CSS that goes with that. Something else that helps for a content person is to be good at accessibility. So understanding like screen readers and high contrast and stuff like that. And it's typically, like I said, one of the first hires that every single company makes before they go public. And not go public as an IPO, like go public as in launch and let people use their product. And it's always a hybrid role of marketing dev. Always. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of. Just more like, for example, like you're building like a plastic system.
Yeah.
Do you work with any clients?
Yes.
Not you personally.
Well, yeah, this. Trust me, I want a refund. No, the thing was, I mostly got to talk to the marketing person for each one of the clinics. I didn't get to talk to the surgeons directly, but I was still talking to somebody who was giving me the content that would go into, the site that I was building. Like, I had to get that from someone. I wasn't the one doing that. There was somebody who did that, and in fact, in one clinic, which this became a huge benefit, there was somebody who knew HTML and CSS, like quite well, in fact, and I could offload the presentation even of all that content off to them. So they literally became my junior developer without the rest of the company knowing. So they ended up, doing tons of dev work, even though they were, nominally supposed to be doing marketing and advertising for that clinic. So, you know,
There's like a role for, like I guess you're developing the national environment. There's a role for physicians to be part of it.
100% there are roles that are, they're all hybrid roles, but yes, there are roles that exist for this. Yeah. Sometimes you are. I mean, a lot of times, a lot of times you're like, hey, I need this content on the website, and the dev's like, I'm busy with the back end. Fill your boots. Yeah. Yeah, no worries. Calgary, you guys have been awfully quiet. You get to ask questions too. That's a great question. Sometimes I don't know. Or drinking from the juice machine, yeah. Ooh, great question. How do you know when it's time to find a new job? So, your average lifespan at a company is going to be between 2 and 5 years. It's not the 1950s anymore, so you're not going to go and get a job with a company and have it be your forever job. And in 35 years you get a gold watch and a certificate and they tell you to GTFO. Like, that's not the way the tech world works. And the reason it doesn't work that way anymore for us is because there's going to come a point with every company that you work with and every product that you work with where you will hit a knowledge ceiling. It's not a glass ceiling, it's just a knowledge ceiling, where you will know the entire product inside and out. You will know all the tech that's necessary to make it happen. You will know where the bugs are, where the weak spots are, where the strong spots are. You'll be the person that onboards the next new hire, and you're going to tell them, see this file over here, don't touch it, or I will beat you until my arms are sore. You're going to know all of those things. You're going to know the project management system inside and out. You're going to know their process. You're probably going to know how the deployments work. The asset pipeline, you will know it end to end. Even if you don't understand the code at the same level as, say, the senior on the team, you'll still know the whole product from corner to corner. And the knowledge ceiling comes when you have to honestly identify that it's been 2 or 3 months since you've learned anything new from that company. Now, it's really easy to assume, well, it's been a week since I did anything new, so therefore I need a new job. Please don't do that. Like, you've got to go for a couple months and honestly have the conversation with yourself of, you know what, I haven't moved the needle forward in terms of skill development. All I've done is work at this company for a few more months. When literally you get asked to do something, you're like, oh my God, again? Okay, fine. That's the point when you want to start asking that question. Is there more that I can learn? And if the answer is in any way yes, you want to try and get as much as you can. If you haven't done the deployments yet, if you haven't touched all the code base, if you haven't done the front end or the back end or the database, or you don't know how the mailers are generated, or you don't know about one particular API integration, you still have more to learn. Ask questions. Hey, can I work on this? You don't get anything you don't ask for. Nobody's just going to walk up and go, you know what, I realized you haven't done this yet, so I want you to work on this. You might have a bit of that in the first couple months just because there's going to be a lot to learn. And somebody will tell you, oh, well, you haven't touched this yet because you won't have touched a lot. But if it's 2 years in and there's still a part of the product you haven't worked on, ask. And if they say no, well, congratulations, you found your knowledge ceiling. And if they say yes, great, you have more to learn. You just bought yourself 3 to 6 months of further employment with that company, which is more raises, more stability, better references, and you get to learn more about whatever this new part of the product is. And don't think that once you've been shown it, you're like, okay, great, I know it, I can just walk away now. No, you have to be able to use it. You have to know it inside and out, know how it breaks, know when it breaks, know why it breaks, and be able to fix it. That's when you can truly say you've hit that knowledge ceiling. And sometime between 2 and 5 years in, with every company, you will hit that point. The deeper into your career you go, the harder it is to hit that point, believe it or not. Because you would think that with more knowledge and more experience, and when you hit those senior levels, that you're just like, oh yeah, I totally understand the entire product. You know, I've looked at it once, I get how it works. But now you have the challenge of, can I make it better? Because as a senior, you're responsible for making it better. So, you know, that's the other question you have to ask yourself at a junior level is, have I contributed everything I can to this product? Have I done enough work so that I can say that I can't honestly make this any better? Are all the tasks that I've been assigned as good as I could possibly do? Is good enough good enough? And if the answer is no, then you still have time there. But when you reach that point where you're like, I can't push this any further, now it's time to move to a new job. Your first couple jobs, you will probably move laterally. You'll probably move from a junior dev role to a junior dev role 1 to 3 times. And that's okay. By the third one, the next job has to be an intermediate. Don't keep taking the same junior dev role, because then all you're doing is repeating your experience over and over again. The other thing that has to happen in order for you to be able to move up is the whole time you're in this tier, you have to be working to build the skills that are going to move you up to this tier. And the difference between junior and senior and intermediate and all of those things is not how many languages you know or how fast you can type or which libraries you've implemented. Hey Shahab, I'll be done in just a minute. It's the difference, the distance between I have no clue how to start this project, or fix this bug, and I see all the moving parts and I can start to make progress. The way that we rate junior, intermediate to senior is, what is that distance? You know, it's typically here for a senior. There's always a gap. It's typically here for a senior and like here for a junior. And that's okay. The other thing that falls into play is, how much supervision do you need to get from here to here? Senior doesn't need any supervision. They are the supervision. They are the adult. You know, but typically when you're working with new tech, you're going to need a lot of help to get from this point to this point. And that's okay. That's expected. But learning the difference between I need to fix this bug to I need to figure out how to build this whole feature. You know, as a junior, you're going to work on a lot of bug fixes. You're going to work on a lot of pieces of features. But you want to practice building bigger and better things. And that's what moves you from junior to intermediate and intermediate to senior, is just your ability to architect and how much supervision you need to do it on your own. When you hit those points where you can't learn anymore, that's when you decide to move on to the next thing. The flip side is, of course, all of the human stuff. If somebody treats you like crap, get out. Nobody's getting paid enough to be treated poorly. So, yeah. Sure. Okay, so the question is it a bad look for a junior to start working at a company for 6 months, then see another opportunity at a better company, something that excites you more, and then go work there? The first time, no. Yeah, in your first year, no. Especially if like the included in that 6 months was your 3-month internship. No, that's not a bad thing at all. When you do that after you've got 10 years of experience, yes. Very, very bad. Yeah. Last thing I want to say, and this is something I forgot to say earlier when I was talking about freelancing. 2 things I want to tell you. Never, ever, ever work for free. I don't care what they promise you. I don't care how many people they decide to tell about your work. I don't care what things they tell you they're going to give you in the future. Never work for free, even if it's your mom. Your mom needs to at least pay you in cookies or dinner or doing your laundry or something. Never work for free. Your work has value. Your time has merit. Second, never work without a contract. It is worse than working for free, even if you get paid, even if everything goes well. Because the contract is there for when it doesn't go well. And if you don't have a contract, you will get burned, and you will have no way to do anything about it. There are great templates online. There's a site called Bonsai. Cost a little bit of money per month, but they will handle all your invoicing and all your contracts. It's brilliant. Costs like $12 a month. Totally worth it. Never work for free. Never work without a contract. Never work for exposure. People die of exposure. That's different. You're not working for free. You're working to make that charity better. That's a very different scenario. You're going into that with an expectation that, there's no money. But if you're doing work for someone that, they come to you and they're like, hey, you want to build my webpage? Sure. How much are you going to pay me? I go $20. Bye. Your work has time. Your work has a value, and don't sell yourself short just because you're a junior. You have the ability to build anything you want and anything they want. So charge, be willing to pay for it. You need to get paid to live, and just because somebody's your friend doesn't mean they get a cut rate. There is no friends and family rate, ever. You have to get paid, plain and simple. Unless they're going to help you pay your rent, there's no friends and family rate. So those are just hard truths, and they suck sometimes when you have to tell somebody no, or no, it's going to cost you this much money. That sucks sometimes. That's a hard conversation. But if a used car salesman says, hey, you want to come build a site for me, but I need you to do it for $100, sure, can I have a car for $100? I'd like that Lexus over there on the corner of the lot. And if they say no, then you're not going to build that site for them for $100. It works both ways. So be proud of yourself, stay humble, keep building, and stay part of the community. It's been awesome for the past 9 weeks, guys. Thank you so much.